Alrighty. Looks like we are officially live, and hopefully YouTube's not having any audio issues today, because that was kind of ridiculous. So, good morning, everyone. Just gonna make sure everything's kind of set up. So one final check. So, I'm live. Things haven't registered on people's ends, so just be patient, please. Okay. So, have gotten the go ahead that we're good to go. Now, today's theme is a little special because it is the beginning of February, or the month of love. Now, one thing that I always see when dealing with different clients and people is they forget this pivotal aspect of forgiveness. They don't necessarily see it as an expression of love or an expression of self love. But in truth, forgiveness is the ultimate power of compassion. Now, we've all heard the saying, you turn the other cheek when someone does you wrong. And although I agree with it in terms of the passivity aspect, where it's not good to put things out there that are negative. So it's just whatever. If they're going to do anything bad, just let them do whatever they're going to do bad. Don't put anything else into the world that's negative. I agree with it in that light. But one thing that many people tend to forget, especially nowadays, is we have a very, I don't want to say ADHD culture, but we have a very, it's almost the instant gratification aspect has influenced us on so many different levels. And we have this with our own pain and suffering and negative experiences as well. And this is experienced and known as forgetting things. Or we could also say dismissing things or kind of covering things up. Now, the problem that happens with this is that you get into this pattern where you're just caught in a daze where it's one event, next event, next event, next event. You're attached to these cycles. And these patterns keep happening, but we don't actually solve the problems. And as I've mentioned in previous meditations, forgiveness and reflection are main pivotal aspects to the digestive process of it's early, sorry about that, the digestive process of experience. And without letting our, I guess you would say, without letting the positive and the negatives kind of get processed and assimilated into our own being, then we run into the many avenues of constantly repeating negative patterns. We can't really see situations before they happen. So that means everything that, bad can go wrong goes wrong. And you're only recognizing it once it actually happens versus having foresight to be able to avoid bad issues. Very similar to like looking across the street both ways so you don't get hit by a car. So this meditation is actually one of the most important. So if you don't have a chance to finish it today, I definitely encourage you to use every spare moment you can to really just reflect on your life and forgive. Because what kind of leads into the whole theme of the month is love. It's being able to grow our sense of unity. It's being able to let go our walls and to expose vulnerabilities so we don't have to worry as much about protecting things that will let things happen out as they need to happen to the world. So the most important thing with all of this is to really pick an intention early on. This is going to be a little bit different than most meditations I do because we're going to kind of in the first part, we're going to kind of explore a given example that you have in your life, an opportunity where you have a chance to forget and forgive. And I said forget because it's one of those processes that's actually rather natural for us. It's once we learn something, it's okay. We kind of forget the whole experience of learning it, but we remember the lesson. And that's very, very important to this because we don't want to dwell or ruminate in our experiences. We don't want to just sit there and be a slug and just be a Debbie Downer all the time and focusing on all the bad things that have happened to us. The purpose of this meditation is actually to kind of sail through those negative things, look through and past those negative points in our life so that we can lift ourselves up and grow. And ultimately, because when we hate, when we are vindictive, when we dwell and when we ruminate, it's just like drinking poison. And I believe I might have said this in the description, but it is, it's just like drinking poison because you're expecting and putting so much negative and almost for some people, evil intent behind another person. Oh, I wish they could have this. I wish this happens to them. I wish that. I wish I never met them, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter what you want to dwell in. But you're putting all of that out there, but the other person isn't actually ever going to receive it. So it's something to think about when you're dwelling in, even in traffic, like when someone cuts you off, you being angry and things like that. It doesn't actually do anything to that person. It's only harming you. And it's very important that I remember this nowadays, especially because cardiovascular health issues are on the rise. This is the way that you heal yourself. Because if you want to think about it like food and digestion, what happens when you have food just sitting in your stomach for too long? You get those gross burps, you feel sick, you get bloated, your body wants to get this stuff out. And it's the same thing with our consciousness and experience. We want to process these negative and traumatic events, but when we don't have the courage, when we don't know how to properly look at these things and analyze these experiences, then we can't actually gain from them and they begin to hurt us. And just like the food, things like that begin to fester in our stomach, they begin to fester in different aspects of our being. Now, I'm not saying I'm a big believer in this because I haven't personally had experiences that have shown me this aspect of life, but there are many people in the East and those who practice Qigong and I guess you could say in the Eastern Vedic yogis that talk a lot about prana and energy. But from the standpoint of the East, everything happens energetically first. Our physical body, and this is, our quantum physics are showing this more and more nowadays, that our physical bodies are based in energy. And if everything's based in energy, then there can be disruptions. I guess you could say there can be hindrances to that flow, a disruptance to that energy. So what you want to think is when you have these negative moments, when you have these hateful energies just kind of stay and fester within our being, they promote bad things within our own body. Sick, tension, stress, anxiety. And we know more now and now that the mind is so powerful, placebo effect, for example, that you can make yourself sick, you can break your body down, but most importantly, with that same understanding, you can also build yourself up. So it's important that we take this approach of healing. We take this approach of love because for you to want to love anyone and anything else, for you to want to put good out into the world, for you to want to be a good person, you need to treat yourself with love. I cannot express this to you more enough because if you don't say, if your candle isn't lit, you're not going to be able to show anyone else the path. So you have to light your own flame of love, your own flame of compassion. And ultimately, that step starts with forgiveness. Now, many of us will seek to forgive another person, but the most powerful thing I recommend that you kind of focus on during this meditation is seek to forgive yourself. So, with that being said, just want you to find a nice, comfortable place. Um, if you can, just make sure there's not a ton of direct light right in your eyes. If you want to, you can wear something that covers them. It's not necessary, but it does help every now and then. So, one thing that we just want to go over real quick is just your breathing and posture. Just breathe comfortably and just make sure you're sitting upright. You don't need to slouch or anything like that. So, as we get ready, let's just make sure we're going ahead now and just relaxing. Now, per normal flow of meditation, it's going to be beginning by bells and then an Om chant. Now, if you know how to chant the Om, you can chant with me, but if not, don't worry. Just stay silent and just begin to rest and listen to the voice. And most importantly, listen to the silence in between each note. Forgiveness is the first step of healing, and the most pivotal in terms of our growth and progression as people. Allow yourself to relax. One thing that we must address is the fact that we've all been wronged by others. But we will be lying if we also say that we have never wronged another. The wheel turns both ways in terms of karma. You can do good and you can do bad. And as the patterns progress in life, we only come to points where we truly act good and live in good graces when we know what bad feels like. When we know how negative and harmful and destructive negative and bad actions are. For it is our own understanding from experience it is that sense of understanding. And when we can sympathize and empathize with the experience of another, we can call this compassion. Or simply put, we think of ourselves when dealing with others. And we think of others when dealing with ourselves. The most important part of forgiveness is to simply recognize that it's not your fault. If one sits and breaks down every choice in their existence, they'll have a never-ending task and will be stuck in isolation carrying it out. In truth, it doesn't matter what has happened. It already has happened. The flow of time seemingly rolls forward. So we mustn't allow ourselves to remain stuck in the past that will never repeat, that you can never fix. There's nothing that anything can do to reverse such actions that happened long ago. In truth, time, the experience of now, is built upon the many births and deaths of each moment. But the power of now, the opportunity that lies with each present moment, is one for you to let go of the past, to heal yourself, to grow and move forward. Who do you want to forgive today? What do you want to forgive? Take a moment to find an intention within your heart. Maybe it's a loved one. Maybe it's yourself. If you're finding it difficult to find a moment, an experience, a person to forgive, look no further than your own contradictions. What are things you do that you know you shouldn't? What are things that others do that infuriate you and quote unquote set you off? You see, it's our contradictions, those truly peeved moments, that are but small examples of the own frustrations we have within ourselves. We simply express them by lashing out at all those around us. We must seek to love. We must seek to forgive, because it is like the tidying process that cleans up our inner space. And what happens when we don't forget? We do it often, do we not? Live in spite, live in pity, live in anger, constantly reminding ourselves of the bad, of the negative. But for what purpose? It is like shooting your own foot with the expectation that the other person will get hurt. Forgiveness takes courage. It takes love. It takes acceptance. It means going beyond what we want, what we see as proper punishment. It goes beyond our judgments, our expectations, our assumptions, our beliefs. It means seeing reality for that which it truly is, a play of beings from the perspective of self, interacting with others with the same perception of life. Meaning we each live within our own world, within our own universe. We're all in the same playground of life, but we're all playing a different game. We perceive moments differently. We absorb experience differently. We learn and grow and are impacted and shaped by life differently. But the common ground that unites us all is everything comes from the perspective of I, of me. This is a unifying factor within all life. We all share the same common ground of I. Do not overlook such statements, for the subtlety and profundity of truth lies within them. We each experience life from our own reference frame, the one we each call I and me. And just like you have been impacted by events, so have others. Just as they have lived through an experience, so have you. Hand in hand, we each live our own lives, We each go through experiences and they impact us differently. Therefore, we must see this as a humbling moment to never assert our own personal authority over life, for you are a part of it, not above it, not below it. You are it. And just as you are it, so is all else. So is everyone and everything else. And just as you've made mistakes, so have others. Just as you've done something you know you shouldn't, so have others. As much as the mind wants to tell you, you're not alone. You never were. Life is constantly showing us the lessons we need to learn, but very few will have the accountability and acceptance to see them. I offer you the opportunity now to be courageous. I offer you my love and support. I give you my courage. Look within yourself, look within your heart. And ultimately, we must forgive ourselves. We must forgive ourselves for not knowing something. We must forgive ourselves for misspeaking. We must forgive ourselves of our actions that have hurt and wronged others. And we must forgive ourselves for holding on to the pain that others have given us. For if you don't, you will return that to the world, that pain, that suffering. You will put onto others what has pained you the most, what has isolated you the most. No matter what emotions or thoughts arise within your experience, the moments when reflecting in such fashion and seeking to forgive and let go, to learn and grow, do so with discipline. Don't allow yourself to get caught into the pity party, the sob party for one. Don't allow yourself to get led with red and run upon tangent of hatred and anger. And don't allow yourself to live in fear as if the exact pain will happen again. The hardest person, the hardest thing to forgive is ourself. And if you currently don't believe that, then you seriously need to look at the world and how you interact with it and how you view others. Because those that point the finger at others fail to see that that finger stems from a hand and an arm that is connected to your body. No matter what happens in our life, we always have a choice how we choose to respond. To forgive means setting what you really want aside. It means not having any expectation, because expectation, assumption, belief, Those are the avenues that bring suffering into our life. When we believe someone should have, could have, when we assume what someone should have done, could do, is capable of doing, we live in a life that isn't true. But many are stuck in the paradox of how they feel things should be and how things actually are. How you feel you were represented and how you came across versus what actually arose. These are the things we must forgive. We must forgive ourselves. Every hypocritical statement, action, negative and hurtful act, thought, feeling. And to help you along this search, see it just like the clouds in the sky. The interpretations come and go. The emotional states come and go. But it's you that remains. And you have a choice to live a life feeling hurt, playing yourself as the victim, or recognizing that life is not intended to be easy, that challenges are bound to arise, that every aspect of difficulty is pivotal, is vital to our growth. A timeless saying that goes across both West and East is that things of drastic seriousness only happen in the lives of those who are ready for them. Maybe your lesson is to learn to let go. Maybe your lesson is to simply love. Maybe the goal is to not wear your heart on your sleeve. The objective is to look more at people, at situations, to be more present, be more aware, to question. There are so many, there are infinite lessons we can each learn from the experiences that happen within our life. But we can't go through such digestion. We can't process these events until we forgive ourselves for them for happening. Until we let go of the what could have, what should be. Because those are just false statements, hypothetical situations that won't happen, and more importantly, that did not happen. Allow yourself to simply relax and let go. Let go of all judgment. Let go of all expectation. Tell yourself it's okay. You'll be okay. Life will be okay. Look within your own heart. Who is it that you push away? Let them in, for they did not know. Allow yourself to look earnestly and honestly Life happens, and no one can justify every action they've ever made. You can't, I can't, no one can. So see the world, look at others in the light of truth. We are each beings in this world trying to live, discover truth, be happy, love. And when you have recognized the higher lessons of truth, the ones that unite us all, you must change your response with how you interact and engage others in the world. Do not add to the negativity of the world. Love. Do not dwell in closed doors. Build bridges and live compassionately. We all desire the same things in life: happiness, freedom, truth, love. Don't forget that in your search. Don't forget that in your life. And bring yourself back to the one word that will remind you all of this: forgiveness. For it is the act of forgiving that is an ultimate expression of love, because you yourself are allowing what you, the ego, your personal desire, it's allowing you to set all of those aside, and you accept those for who they are fully in the moment, no matter their mistake. Life is what you make it. And don't take it so seriously, for we're all in this playground, enjoying this game of experience together. And although we may have forgotten for a brief moment in time, we're all children of the One. This path of forgiveness, this doorway of opportunity, is always present. It's always there. You simply need to set your arms aside, your weapons of division, your beliefs, your assumptions, your conditionings, your expectations, and warmly embrace the reality that is. For if you truly seek to change yourself and change the world, you must heal and recover. You must give yourself the opportunity to let go of the pain that holds you back. For it is like swimming with weights around your feet. You're working far harder than you need to. You're not going nearly as far as you can. So again, I lift up my heart to you. I build my own bridge of love for you. so you may take the leap of faith and trust to explore your own self, to forgive your own self, and to love your own self. The next few moments we will sit in silence together. And we will come back when the bells ring again. And with this time that we sit, allow yourself to let go and forgive, but most importantly, to learn. Learn the lessons from each experience and event. For if you truly love yourself, you won't let them happen to you again once you've learned the lesson. So look, learn, love, and be released through your own forgiveness. And if you can, just begin to slowly bring yourself back. And that concludes today's meditation. Now, the most important aspect of everything that is always kind of discussed and thrown out there in these meditations is the simple act of assimilation. None of these lessons, none of these teachings mean anything if you don't apply them. Now, I often like to tell my students that if you find yourself having a profound realization or recognition, or even if you've taken a little bit of truth from something that you've gained in terms of an insight, more often than not, you will be tested. And I don't mean it like someone's waiting around a corner with a pen and paper, just like, oh, here you go, Scantron. No, it's, for example, one of the most profound experiences I've had in terms of forgiveness and letting go is forgiving a person. And that same day, interacting with that person and them having a total meltdown for no reason. And it was one of those things where it was borderline temper tantrum, just saying outlandish things, being ridiculous, very unlike that individual. And in that same moment, I kind of looked at that and observed and was just sitting there just like, this is exactly what I was just thinking about in my meditation. This is exactly the same insight I got. And, I can't say that I've, had a perfect batting record in those moments, but more often than more often than not, when you're aware of these situations happening and you hold on, not necessarily hold on, but you really digest and you're really, keeping that insight that you've gained at the forefront of your mind and your experience, then when these things happen in life, you have more space, you have more time, you have more, I guess you would say, clarity in terms of how to respond. You're not instantly overwhelmed with that impulse, that, knee jerk reaction, that fight or flight response of the body in certain circumstances. You're able to have space to recognize, to see that even the blood boiling in terms of emotions, or the thoughts beginning to get restless, or the body getting anxious, you're able to recognize and see this in the moment. And that's the importance of meditation. It's to really carry this with you throughout the day and make it normality. You have to hold on. You have to remember. You have to remind yourself over and over and over again, because it took that to get you to this point of chaos. It takes the constant running away off on tangents, getting attached to each emotional response we have, or physical tension filled moment. It takes all of these habitual actions to grow through your own consistency. So it's the same thing with kind of reversing the flow, or with building and bringing more positivity into your life. But most importantly, you can't really, quote unquote, get rid of the person unless you're actively trying to negate or mitigate what that personal response is. And that's very much what I mean by the self-interest, the assumptions, the belief. It's, what is the ego within your own experience love to use to push people away, to cause drama, to cause chaos? Because when you really grow up and recognize these things and you see the patterns for what they no longer trick you. They no longer play you. And, excuse me, I actually love, so I'm a few different tribes, but I love Native American lore in terms of the coyote and the fox, and the representation that animal really brings to life. Because if you want to look at it in its purest sense, the coyote, the fox, they're cunning. They're more often than not tricksters, and they get you into trouble because they sweet talk you, and or they get you into trouble because they make you feel like there's a moment of danger or some type of fear. And how I like to interpret these stories is always looking at the coyote, the fox, as the ego, as that self-interest that I've talked about. That when you start to assume things in life, you start to perceive them a certain way. When you judge people, you start to perceive situations differently. And this same cunning trickster is the thing that keeps kind of bringing you back to that same point of delusion. Um, Now, we can experience this in terms of our own life, when we know we shouldn't do something, but something in us is just like, oh, just do it, you'll be all right. And then you do it, and then you get in trouble. I always like to use the story of, the mind is the first thing to tell you to eat the cake. And the moment you eat the cake, it's going to be like, why'd you eat the cake? What were you doing? Why do you, what's wrong with you? So you have to see the play that your own experience has. Now, I don't want to get too into don't want to get into it too much today, but the conditionings that you have experienced and absorbed in your life play a huge role in a lot of this whole process. Um, and ultimately, just some words for people who are a lot more serious about this path of forgiveness: realize that you must forgive yourself first. Um, Now, I say you must forgive yourself first, but in reality, that's very rarely how it goes. Um, Usually you have to kind of start forgiving other people and things, but in truth, they're only temporary patches to the real solution here. It's important that you seek to forgive yourself of all the wrongs and things you've done in your life, because if you don't forgive yourself, then what are you doing? You can't just forgive everyone and everything else and then still see yourself as this terrible person and being, or delusions of grandeur and think you're awesome and infallible. If you haven't woken up from the teenage mentality of that, please watch the rest of these videos. The world needs you to. Um, and ultimately, one thing that people need to recognize is that, a very common path of forgiveness, people usually get caught up when it comes to their loved ones. And the reason for this is because we're all kind of stuck in the same boat. We, more often than not, tend to, you could say, be hyper overly critical of those that are closest to us because they are closest to us. And again, we can say that this is another huge assumption that we have, that just because people have been around you for years, that they know everything that's going on in your head, and we often live like that. So it's good to remember that the real challenges to the path of forgiveness come through yourself. It comes with forgiving yourself. It comes with forgiving those loved ones closest to you. Um, and again, the only thing that I really want to encourage and remind people is that we're all people. No one's perfect. We all make mistakes. And to live as if people are perfect and infallible is constantly pinning yourself against an unachievable standard. Now, does that mean you can't seek to be at the best you can be? No. Always you should seek to be the best you can be, to do your best. That's the only perfection we can ever ask for, to leave it all out on the field, so to speak. But the one thing that we must understand here is, if you don't forgive yourself and you don't forgive those closest to you, um, you're going to, A, keep getting hurt by yourself or by others that are close to you. Um, and B, you'll never truly be able to open up and love anyone or anything else in truth. Because when we don't have a, gosh, how can I put this into words? When we don't have an expectation of what love should be, we're able to really love. And I think that's very can be understood very much easier by, or much easier rather, by the child asking for dessert early. You have to tell them no. You have to be. It's tough love. You have to say no. Eat your dinner, and then you can have a cookie later if you want to. And if you keep asking me, you're not going to get a cookie at all. You know. So it's that same concept here. You can't want the world to love you, and you can't get your cookie before dessert if you're not really willing to put yourself aside and to forgive those who have really harmed you and who have done you wrong, because you'll just be carrying around the past wounds of others. And I just want to make something very clear here. To all those who have been abused, um, I feel you. Um, I haven't been sexually abused, but I've been abused in my own different ways. Um, and one thing that is very important to understand is, when you experience something traumatic, or if you experience more adult situations in your youth, you're being forced to grow up. And with how the world is nowadays, there's a lot of kids and there's a lot of people in general that were forced to grow up and are being forced to grow up rather quickly. And just know that you're strong enough to get through it. It wouldn't have happened to you, specifically you, if you weren't strong enough and courageous enough to really overcome it. And the atrocity that happens within our country and our world, of the people who have abused children and the children who are put in these real life situations at very young ages, being close with death at such young ages, poverty, not being able to eat, not having shelter, the basic fundamental needs of water and food. Those who have suffered have the most potential for growth because we learn from the pain. And I really, really, really want to encourage and just to promote this aspect of self-love, because forgiving someone isn't forgetting what happened to you. It isn't forgetting what arose within your life. It's the exact opposite. It's learning everything you can about the situation, the types of people it happened around, the main points of conflict were, the ins and out of every experience. That's how we truly let go and quote unquote forget. And I don't even like to use the word forgetting in that sense, because it's just us no longer dwelling and ruminating. But you have to really, really look within your heart and look and ask yourself, what's holding you back from letting go? What's holding you back from forgiving this person? What's really holding you back? Is it just the fact that sometimes you just want to say, no, I just want to be mad at them? We don't really know, but you have to be willing to ask the questions. You have to be willing to really dig deep within your own heart. Because if you don't overcome these hurdles, you're always going to put up walls. And there's always going to be conflict in your life. And again, I want to remind you, if you've been through some serious shit, you have the most potential out of anyone here. Those who have suffered have the most potential. Now, the problem is, those who are often suffering are often left with the choice of survival or not. But I tell you, I implore you, I encourage you, this is the most important search you can have. Because when you are capable of experiencing the world without getting enraged by it, when you're able to experience the world without feeling disconnected from it, there's nothing more beautiful. And each of us has the potential for that. Each of us has the power for that. And most importantly, each of us deserves that. We deserve the love. We deserve the union. We deserve the grace. We deserve the lessons. We deserve the insights, the knowledge, the truth, the wisdom. But you have to go through these steps of assimilation. You have to look. You have to remind yourself. You have to constantly re-remind yourself, especially in moments of distraction. And if you are finding yourself in a situation where you are going to be in direct confrontation with people, and I guess you could say other experiences that remind you of those past traumas and pains, and they bring up those same wounds of the heart, again, remind yourself, love, look back at forgiving, be compassionate, be humble. We only get caught up in the BS of life when we forget our place in it. And it's really when we think we're above other people and things that we forget that everyone's just out and about trying to make their life go. We're all just trying to live and be happy and love. And I want to again say thank you to those of you who joined us for the meditation today. Again, this is one of the most powerful ones that I have to offer, and it's the reason why I started off with forgiveness and self-love for February, because this is the path. This is the start. If you want a happy life, if you want to live in good graces, if you want to be happy and joyful and blissful and gleeful, it starts with forgiving yourself, because only through that do you really begin to learn about yourself and how your life is, the patterns in your life. And it's the easiest doorway to greatness, I can say, because when you know your faults and you're actively working on them, you're on that road of perfection that I talked about. You're just doing your best, and that's all you can ask for. So I remind you, you may be tested by things you've learned today. So just keep those in mind. and have a great day. Have a great weekend. And I will see you next weekend where we will continue our talks on love. I haven't decided what we'll talk about yet and what we'll go into in meditation, but it's going to be love related. So we need more of that in the world. So definitely don't miss out and join us. If you can, don't forget to check the description, follow on Instagram, subscribe, hit the notification bell here on YouTube. And other than that, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. Now, let me just bear with me while I awkwardly try to end these live stream videos because